I was playing Jenga in El Salvador last Sunday night. It's not really what I expected to be doing in El Salvador, and I'll admit it's not even necessarily what I wanted to be doing, but it was the right thing. I had arrived in El Salvador the day before, Saturday afternoon, meeting up with the rest of the delegation who had arrived there on Wednesday. I chose the 4-day option, for which I was very grateful. On Sunday, we drove to the Romero community, which is on the northern side of San Salvador. I celebrated Mass, a bilingual Mass of sorts. It was followed with visits to various communities and students' homes. We came back that afternoon and gathered at the community center for a cultural exchange. Then they presented a beautiful evening presentation. We had a nice dinner. We taught them some line dancing, which was very popular with our Salvadoran brothers and sisters. And then all of us went to separate homes to stay with families for the night. It was something I had questioned whether I would do or not. We were all given the option to go back to the hotel in San Salvador. But if I had, I would have been the only one who did that. And I realized I would have been lonely there. I would have been missing the other delegates. And I really felt like I needed to give this risk a try. So I went to the home of Luis, Santos, and Jose, along with their mother, who welcomed me and one other delegate, and fortunately, a translator who was there to help the two of us because neither of us could speak any Spanish. When we got to the house and were settled in, they did a few household tasks. Luis changed the tire on his bike, for example, while we visited. But he kept saying, "We are going to play Jenga." Eventually, the game came out. If you don't know what Jenga is, it's very simple. Three little pieces of wood stacked on three little pieces of wood, and so on, building a little tower. The goal is to just remove one of those pieces of wood each time it's your turn without toppling the whole thing. It gets very challenging. Well, we had a great time. We enjoyed each other's company. We visited, we got to know one another, and we had lots of laughs. And while I thought we might play 3 or 4 games, we played 10, 12, maybe even 14 games before finally I called it a night. At 10:30, I parted company and went to the room. The reason I worried about staying with a family was that I knew I probably wouldn't sleep well. It was an unfamiliar place. I knew the room would be hot. I figured the roosters would be crowing all night long. The traffic would keep me awake, and I just knew that I wouldn't sleep well, and I didn't. But fortunately, before we left, another delegate had said, who had done this before, "So what if you don't sleep one night? You can sleep the next night, but the grace of the experience is more than you can imagine." And they were right. There was abundant blessing that came from those few hours spent with that family, listening to their stories, watching them interact, and just being in awe of the way they live so simply and are so happy and so incredibly generous to us as their visitors. That night, that sleepless night, was a cost I had to pay. But it was a cost I realize now that is rewarded far more than any suffering I endured. It's how it typically goes. To do something worthwhile, there's usually some kind of a cost. For the sake of the reign of God, we're often asked to make a sacrifice, to lay down our lives in service. As Jesus says, you have to take up your cross daily and follow. It's not always going to be easy. There's a cost. We begin Kindness Week this next week. The families of Terry Lamano an alum of St. Elizabeth School and a former May Queen, Reed Underwood, and William Corcoran, whom were all shot at the Jewish Community Center by a religious bigot in April of 2014, ask us and everyone in Kansas City to make an extra effort this week to practice kindness. And what I know about kindness is that it's redemptive and it's costly. It can change hearts. It can change the outcome of a story. It can soften the angriest hearts, but it will be costly. It doesn't happen by chance. It's a choice we have to make. In the face of conflict and division in this world, kindness is becoming ever more important. In the face of political hostilities and religious differences and bigotry in so many forms, the choice to practice kindness is a choice to put the gospel into action. Because every one of us has received so much from the kind and merciful heart of God. And as I know, in the kingdom of God, when you receive a gift, you are not to keep that gift. It's not just offered for your sake. What you have received as a gift, you in turn are called to give. This call to be kind is really a call to go beneath the Pharisaic surface of faith. Jesus tells the people that holiness has to surpass that of scribes and Pharisees. In other words, it has to be more than words. It has to be more than pretense. It has to go beneath the surface. It has to go to the heart. So the kindness we have received from the heart of God is a kindness we are asked to share with all we encounter, believing in its redemptive power, even as it will cost us.